In traveling the country teaching West Coast swing, I find that dancers all over are making the same 3 mistakes.
Only 3?
Well, that's all we have time for in this video, Megan. But when we teach together, we also cover 3 concepts in group classes that are going to be really helpful. So if you're looking up your social game, this is the video for you. All right, before we get to the top 3 mistakes for the followers and leaders, I want to cover 3 things that we cover in all of our group classes. And that is the fact that all of our West Coast swing patterns are based off of 3 basic patterns. Number 1 is some sort of a push pattern. Number 2 is some sort of a pass pattern, whether it's a right or a left side pass. And the 3rd branch of the tree is our 8-count pattern, the whip. So no matter what move you're doing, no matter how complicated it gets, I want you to look at it through the lens of, is this a push, pass, or whip? And in that case, it was a whip-based pattern. So that's number 1. If you want to see our pattern tree chart, it's a way that shows how all the patterns that we teach relate back to the push, pass, and whip. Megan created it. You can get it free here. Yes, you did. It took a long time. Long time.
It did take a long time.
Number 2 is that I think you should look at group classes slightly differently as leaders and followers. So Megan, what do the followers need to focus on in group classes?
Followers, it is very important that you know your footwork for your patterns, for a push, a pass, and a whip. From there, you're going to be able to know all the other patterns that are variations from there. And
a quick story, in Norway we were teaching, I taught a West Coast swing class on one side and then I taught a line dance class, and the line dancers learn their footwork much faster. So to fix that problem, I want the followers to be able to do a sugar push to music all by yourself, a right side pass to music, oh that's a whip, that's a whip, okay good, sure. And then a right side pass.
Sorry.
Right? All by yourself with no partner to music. That is a key number 2. For leaders in group classes, this is what I want you to focus on. The concept of the pattern. Megan and I will teach baby steps where we'll teach this hand goes up and over to catch that elbow in this particular move. I want you to focus on that because as I'm doing a pattern, a complicated pattern, my goal in that pattern, right, is more concept based. What I mean by that is I don't have to be super specific with my footwork. It's just the concept of the footwork. And if you looked at that, I did that on the wrong footwork, but I was in the right area. So number 2 is leaders, I want you to look at the concept of the move and focus on that. Followers need to focus on the footwork so that when the leaders lead, off to the races. The 3rd thing we cover in group class before we get to our 3 keys for leaders and followers, or 3 mistakes, is that there are 4 levels of learning: beginner, intermediate, advanced, and knowing your beginner stuff. Cool. So what I mean by that is at this level watching this video, you can start to focus on the little things. So you want to get to that point as quickly as possible. If you're an intermediate dancer, go back to beginner class. Help out, dance with the newbies, because you'll learn things and the teachers will say things in those classes that you didn't hear at the beginner level, right? Same thing will happen at the intermediate and advanced level. So Megan, what is the number 1 mistake when you teach West Coast swing, traveling, teaching, that leaders make?
Leaders, you have a tendency to not like to connect to yourself, meaning there is connection to your partner, and then there is connecting that arm to your core. So if you're turned away from your partner, there's a lot of people that like to kind of swing open, and then this arm is not attached from the leader's perspective there. And so you don't have to be facing your partner to connect, but you do need to have a little tension from your arm to your core.
So just that part right there, leaders.
So it's kind of like your lat.
I can be at an angle, but I want to roll that in, so I'm connecting this back. She's feeling it through the hand. I'm using these fingers here. She's hooking on with her fingers. So connecting to yourself. Now, followers, the first thing that and this is actually not usually the first thing I talk about, but it definitely comes up in almost every lesson, and that is to move yourself. So you've been told not to be heavy. Here's my definition of too heavy of a connection. Megan and I dance pretty heavy. We're connected in our anchor. There's a lot of power right there. Give me some power, Miss Megan.
You want more.
Now, the reason why she's not heavy is because once we move, she moves. So followers, I want you to move yourself. Going back, this is why we covered the group class stuff first. You know your footwork. As soon as you get released, you're moving yourself, right? I'm not dragging you down the slot. Cool beans? which leads to number 2. What's the second thing that you cover in lessons?
Leaders, try not to bail right off the track. The follower needs to be able to feel some movement in the direction that they are going.
So leaders, we're initiating something back. This can be done a ton of different ways, right? I can step back to initiate a pattern, right? I can rotate to initiate a pattern. I could even lift my hand to initiate a pattern, but something has to move your partner and not just assume she's going to go on the pattern. So you want to lead the first part. Followers, the second thing that I talk about, and I'll have Megan demonstrate, is as simple as the underarm turn. 1, 2, 3, and 4, 5, and 6. I find a lot of people dancing West Coast Swing a long time mess this up. We call it getting skinny through the slot. So if Megan passes me wide in the slot, 1, 2, 3, and it's a long way to reach to the other side, right? If she passes me skinny in the slot, it's going to be much easier to reach over her head. So Megan, can you demonstrate the footwork? There's 2 different ways to think about this.
Yes, so followers, we're gonna go walk, walk. You're gonna step out, and then you're going to rotate as you cross, which is going to make you skinny down the slot. Then go to 4, 5, and 6. The other way is to suck your foot in. 1, 2, on 3, you're still gonna step out, but you're actually going to rotate almost back to where you were looking before. And 4, 5, and 6.
And when I teach this to followers, there's 2 different ways that I get this across. Number 1 is what Megan talked about, being very precise in the footwork, which also could look like styling. The other thing is to look where you came from as quick as possible. So 1, 2, I'm gonna look where I came from as quick as possible, which leads into this, which is pretty cool, is if Megan goes wide, I have this hole all the way to the other end before I get connected. If she looks back at me and goes skinny, we're connected much earlier and it's much more enjoyable. So that gets us into number 3. What's the third thing that you teach in all your lessons?
Leaders, once you know your basics and are getting up in your level, maybe try to lead a little smaller.
So what we mean by that is if we looked at a turn, like the lead for a turn in group class, it might look like that as the beginner, right?
So big.
But as we get better and we're more connected to our partners, the leads get smaller and more subtle.
Get connected.
Right?
Look
And
at
so
that.
in my experience, that's Megan's cheesy way of every question. What should the followers focus on? Connect. So when you are better connected, there'll be a more subtle lead. So leaders, and followers, if you feel like you have to do too much, it's probably that there's not enough connection and the body's not responding. So if I have a good, strong connection on 1, I can turn Megan and she'll feel the connection. Now, whose responsibility is that? Both. Both, because I can make up for it as the leader. If my partner's not connected, I roll that in like Megan was talking about. Now I'm connected, and now I have more of a connection and I can do a subtle lead. So that leads me into the third thing that I teach all the followers. The third mistake is that the followers need to connect at the end of the whip, right? So just like we're connected here in the anchor step, we're also connected here in the whip, right? And the way I describe this is, in all of our classes, is there's a half pipe where the skaters jump in, they float, they skate down, and they go up and they're in the air, and we know they're coming back, but there's a delay before they come back. So a boring whip looks like this. We just walk through the footwork and it works, right? And then, but the better way is to be connected at the end there to create some power and speed. 1, 2, 3, and 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. But there's a trick to the footwork. Megan, reveal the trick to the footwork.
Followers, we must put our heels down. So we have 1, 2, 3 on, and we need to make sure that our heels go all the way down so that our body weight goes back to that foot. Then we step forward for 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8.
Did you know that there's 5 drills that can improve your West Coast swing in 30 seconds? If you want to see our 5 drills, you can get them right here. And if you want to watch a video on the 5 things that your dance teacher wants to tell you but can't in group class or when you're paying for private lessons, watch this video right here.